Eminent flautist, dancer, choreographer, composer, musician, musicologist, writer, poet. It is no wonder that in our age of acute specialization, Dr. Vijay Raghav Rao is looked upon as a rare gem for his excellence and versatility in more than one field of art. In Dr. Rao, we may say, we find the emergence of the 16th century Renaissance man. We are indeed most privileged to have with us today Dr. Vijay Raghav Rao. Vijay ji, let's begin at the very beginning. What was the family environment like? How was it so conducive that you could take to so many arts at such a young age?
Well, it was a middle-class family with all its trials and tribulations, and perhaps to escape from the painful realities, I and my elder brother took to the fine arts as extracurricular activities. My cousins used to sing Carnatic music. Though they were not professional performers as such, they had a thorough grounding. Years later, when we looked back, we found that life without creativity is devoid of life itself, and we thanked God because one of the most beautiful gifts that God has bestowed upon our family is the power to express one's inner self either through sweet sounds of music or thought-provoking words and verses. Later on, today, my brother is a very well-known poet in Andhra. He has just retired as the chief editor of an established magazine. And as for myself, well, my life is an open book.
Vijay ji, I think while you were still in your teens, you had simultaneously started dancing, playing on the flute, singing, and even writing. At the time, did you have any idea of seriously branching out and specializing in any field of art, or did you just enjoy doing everything?
Well, let me confess, the flute is my first love. I adore it, I pine for it, I invoke it for all my innovative experiences. It's perhaps my open window for the world of sound. Right in my childhood, when I used to watch the street magician playing the flute with one hand and the damaru in other hand, I used to think, well, if he can do it, I can. And I was fascinated by his playing, so I bought a small flute for 8 annas and began to toy with it. Right then, it was just, what should I say, the formative period. And moving from the world of my childhood to the world of my maturity, I found that there was a gradual change in the environment. And behind this process of mental change, dancing, choreography, orchestration, etc., had a demanding desire on my lives at various stages. But believe me, I never forgot the ideal, the main goal of my life, the flute.
There have been some great influences in your life. Tolstoy, Maxim Gorky, then Premchand, Rabindranath Tagore, Rukmini Devi Arundel, Uday Shankar, Bala Saraswati, Pannalal Ghosh, and of course Ravi Shankar. When and why did you feel the need for a guru?
Well, you have named some of the most beautiful names I ever think of. I used to haunt the public libraries to read the classics of these people because my brother used to name these things. For instance, Tolstoy's War and Peace, Maxim Gorky's Mother, Premchand's Kafan were some of my most favorite things. At the age of 15, I have translated Sharat Babu, Griyodav, Bindur Chele, Parinito, Bada Didi, etc. Then, while talking of Pannababu, he is the pioneer for bringing the bass flute onto the concert platform. And about Rukmini Devi, she had the guts to bring Bharatanatyam on the stage at a time when only Devadasis used to do performances. As for Bala Saraswati, she is the uncrowned king of Abhinaya. And Uday Shankar again, he is the innovator of this thing called creative choreography, and his presentation was excellent. Above all, Pandit Ravi Shankar ji, my guru, perhaps he is my Guru Brahma. He joined the All India radios in the 50s, and when I first heard about him, I had the opportunity to listen to his concert live. Then I said, I must unlearn whatever I did, and I began to learn from the rudiments of Indian music. And of course I was fortunate enough that he loved me so much that in all his professional ventures I had a part to play with.
There was a point in your life when you switched over from Carnatic music to Hindustani music. How easy was it to effect this change?
Well, nothing was easy. Any system in the world, whether it is Hindustani, Carnatic or Western system, given a maestro who understands the rudiments of this, the aesthetic experience is equally the same. And one who denigrates one system over the other, perhaps is looking at the elephant like the six blind men. There is nothing wrong with the systems, but the individual who practices it. As for myself, it's just a personal question, because I was born as a South Indian, but I was brought up in North India. I had the basis of South Indian music, but I had to struggle hard to get into the North Indian system when I took Pandit Ravi Shankar ji as my Guruji. There are beautiful nuances typical of his system. For instance, it might be true or might not be, but the general view is, in the South, it is strongly laya based, rhythm based. In the North, it's beautifully swara oriented. So I wanted to have a combination of all these nuances together. So I said I must be perfect with both the systems, and henceforward I began practicing the Northern system. For 6 months I never touched my flute in this southern way. I used to refuse engagement saying that I was ill, I had an accident and all, because the South Indian flute is geared, you play the Rikha Bessa. But the North Indian flute, in the Kalyani Tat, we play the Sa as this. So it took me several months to gear myself to the North Indian system.
Vijayji, you had two very long stints, one with the All India Radio and the other with Films Division. What would you say has been your permanent contribution to celluloid music?
Well, first I must thank both these institutions, because they have been the arena of my practical professional training. While I was doing work, I was in fact learning. These were the two places where great masters used to visit. First thing I felt in AIR was the supremacy of the spoken word. And the same thing after AIR turned out into television and the film medium, perhaps some people forgot that the film medium is such a powerful medium. It should not just be taken away with the spoken word. So some of those days documentaries depended mostly on commentaries. The first thing I thought, that our music and sound effects are such that they can change the entire shape of the films. So I began to think about the right thing in the right place. It's a simple question. If you want to give a concert for 6 hours playing the Rag Darbari, you can. But you can't dilute 6 seconds on the celluloid, because it's life magnified several times on the screen. In fact, all sounds that enhance the emotional impact of the visuals become much more than music. They go beyond a raga. For instance, it can be the thud of a hammer or the purr of a buzzer, provided the right thing is placed in the right moment. Let's say a great war is lost and there are corpses and dead bodies. You needn't wail with a 100-piece orchestra. Just absolute silence. Cut the soundtrack from its chaos and use a distant dog barking and all that. Perhaps you would feel the same aesthetic appeal as if you had orchestrated it. If you can see Alfred Hitchcock, just in a vacant room, he will keep a broomstick and he will give such ominous music as bum, ba ba bum, ba ba bum. It will look as if the broomstick is going to murder you. That is the power of the soundtrack in films. So I understood the secret. And later on, actually some of the films that came out were totally without a single word. I should say Through the Eyes of a Painter, done by M.F. Hussain, which won the Golden Bear. Life, Akbar, Ananta, Trip, Explorer, and several of these animation films which you see them on television today and national integration were a product of the 70s, which perhaps reflected my thought. And I was so happy for one thing that I could, I was told, have contributed to a new genre of music which stood as music, never disturbed the film in its visuals, yet contributed to the aesthetic effect of these films.
During your years with All India Radio, this was soon after independence, you must have had a lot of unforgettable experiences. Could you recount some of them?
Apart from my professional stints, I have several memoirs to recollect. Whenever I think of them, I get dismayed. The first one I should say, I used to go on my motorbike from Karol Bagh to All India Radio, and each day I would see Mahatma Gandhi's prayer meetings in Panchkaya Road. One of those days, I was on duty at the All India Radio. At the tag end of a recording, instead of the speech, I hear a bullet sound. We were thunderstruck, and having no instructions from the authorities, because nobody foresaw it, all of our artists whom I was heading, I just abruptly said, "Let us sing Raghupati Raghav Rajaram." And today it has become a symbol associated with Mahatma Gandhi. Number two, Sardar Patel ji was convalescing, he was ill. he was brought to Birla House. Each day, myself and a Sarangi maestro, Gulam Saber, were put on duty to treat him with soothing, sweet music without rhythm and all that, so that he can enjoy and relax. And the third one, perhaps I was the first one after independence to conduct the national anthem on the ramparts of the Red Fort. Now it has become a movement by itself.
Vijayji, coming back to your first love, the flute, one notices you play a rather long flute, perhaps about 3 feet long. Is this something very singular to you?
To say in one word, it fascinated me because it is the true facsimile of human voice. Because in the Vilambit passages of an alap, when you delineate them, you feel that the sobriety and the depth of Indian music in the first stages should come out in your renderings. For that period, I mostly use my bass flute. Can I play it for you and sing also? Re ga ma pa pa ma ga ma re. Re ga ga ma pa re pa ma ga. De ta ta da da re ga ri. No end to it.
That was beautiful. One wishes it could have just gone on forever. But to get back to the interview, is it right to presume that you were the first to introduce vocal music to the orchestra?
Well, normally, pure classical music doesn't need any orchestration because by themselves they are either impressive or expressive. But in films, several people have adopted ragas to their songs. There too, a certain dilution is always, it creeps in. And some of them have really come to the point. For instance, Vasant Desai, you must have heard of in Jhanak Jhanak Payal Baje. Amir Khan Sahib has sung one. And in Baiju Bavra, Naushad ji has used both Amir Khan Sahib and Pandit Polaskar ji. But my point of view and the way I introduce pure classical music is totally different. In fact, not I, but Pandit Ravi Shankar ji should get the credit. What actually we do is, since we have studied the real spirit of the raga, for instance, as a simple example which we all know, Rag Miha Ke Malhar, the very name of it will remind you of rains and clouds and all that. But it's not just adopting some notes of the raga and writing for the script. What I did particularly was bringing in pure forms of classical music like khyal, drupad, dhamar, etc., which normally don't need orchestration. But in theme musics like what I have been doing, I physically bring them with the total spirit for which the raga is originally created, edit them, place them in such a place where not just the meaning of the raga but the aesthetic appeal along with the context of the sequence becomes much more evident and beautiful. I produced the Ode to Peace. In it there were several forms of music, Drupad, Dhamar, Nom Tom, Tarana, all etc. They just don't stand as Tarana or Drupad or Dhamar there. They become a part and parcel of my story in the theme. Try to give the spirit of classical music, enter into my orchestration also, and that had been an advantage because of the so many nuances of Indian orchestration and music. We can't avoid the beautiful spirit of Indian classical music in its purest form.
Now you have composed music for a number of feature films. Perhaps this is a lesser known facet of your life. And you have also assisted Ravi Shankar in a number of films. Now, how did the purist in you reconcile itself to composing music for the Formula Hindi film?
Well, first thing, let me tell you, this notion that commercial films are normally very bad and the new wave films are very good may not be really correct. To my opinion, there are only two kinds of films: the good films and the bad films. Of course, there were several experiments in commercial films too. Qanun had no songs at all. Ittefaq, then Yadein, all these come under experimentation in commercial films. But really the new wave started with Mrinal Sen's Bhuvan Shom, aided by the Film Development Corporation, and I was lucky to be the music director of that film. The first experiment I did was, with just 5 musicians in a friend's room, I recorded the whole music on quarter-inch tape, and probably for the first time, the whole music from quarter-inch tape to the magnetic tape and to sound negative was transferred, and we saved a lot of money in that.
आप यहीं पे ठहरिए, जब मैं पुकारूं तो आइएगा।
देखो, लॉक कर दिया।
क्यों?
ठीक।
For his unmatched contribution to music, Dr. Rao has been bestowed many awards and citations. Among them are the Padma Shri and the Sangeet Natak Academy Award. It is amazing that despite your preoccupation with music, you've managed to write so much. Now, as a poet, you first wrote in Telugu.
Yeah.
And then you branched out into English also.
It was perhaps simultaneous.
Some of your poems, especially the ones that are published under Nirvana and other poems, have a religious touch to them. Is it possible that you identify with Lord Krishna on account of the flute?
Well, it may be true to some extent, but I go by a different manner. Words and music, how closely related they are. Even the very definition of Indian music, Geetam, Vadyancha, Nrityancha, Trayam Sangeetam Uchyate. It's a beautiful combination of song, instrumental music, and dance. If the word is the thought incarnate, and so is music, and poetry is the music of my soul, aesthetic pleasure elevates man to such heights of extreme sensitivity that we forget all bonds of caste, creed, and nationality, and we become an absolute one. And to come into that spirit, it's perhaps poetry that I feel that I can reach my audiences. Then, whenever I write poetry, it suggests me of various musical movements, and whenever I make music, I simultaneously think of poetry also. So they are so interwoven that they are perhaps interrelated and indispensable to my creative work.
I think our viewers would love to hear you recite some of your poems.
Here's a small poem called Prelude. When I first wrote this poem, I thought I wanted to tell why I live for. Perching grim on a perilous brim, and pelting pebbles into fathoms of time to reach a drop and quench the thirst of ages in quest of that elusive one, and measuring infinity with heartbeats, in the trivial span of a lifetime, someday, far from the precincts of the forlorn cage, I flutter, fly, fade out. Here is another poem. This is during the period of my love and turmoil. It's called Fond Hopes. These jasmine flowers are bewitching. Their fragrance whispers an awning to adore your plates. But for this longing, they shall cease to blossom. This glorious spring may forfeit its charms as moments fleet into months and years. Come, keep your promises. These jasmine flowers are compelling. Like precious pearls, they lure me to pluck and plunder. I knit reeds for you and wait where all the rivers meet the sea. Come, keep your promises. These jasmine flowers are soothing. Their balmy charms may palliate my painful pangs of separation. I spangle them on my speckled heart to throb until you meet. Come, keep your promises.
It has been indeed a most fulfilling life, and we presume that your day also has 24 hours, like all ours. Looking back now, would you say you have any regrets?
Well, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. It is destiny. Whatever I have done is destiny. Why should I perturb it? I am what I am, and I am happy with myself.
Although he has retired from films division, Dr. Rao's romance with innovative music is far from over. He is still experimenting, still composing, still playing, much to the delight of people who almost swear by the Vijay Raghav Rao School of Music.